Be the Talk, episode 332, featuring Sunny McGaw. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Sunny McGaw. Sunny, are you ready to talk?
I sure am. Thanks, Nathan.
In August 2017, Sunny McGaw, her husband, and their 3 children left their secure lives in Toronto for the adventure and challenge of backpacking around the world. 9 months, 5 continents, 19 countries, and 69,000 kilometers. Sunny is a marketing enthusiast who believes that the best learning comes from traveling the world. Sunny McGaw, welcome to the talk.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Your talk is called Building Mental Grit Through Hard Travel. And I love this talk because you talk about looking up at 3,900 stairs. You talk about this really great balance between grit versus entitlement, which is super relevant today. You talk about some of your keys to grit in travel, which includes traveling light and having patience, empathy, and my greatest challenge, which is my number 32 strength finder out of 32, which is adaptability. So, Sunny, please take us behind the talk.
Thanks so much. So we accomplished what we set out to accomplish in that we showed our kids and ourselves how people really live around the world, and that was our goal. Leading up to our trip, which some people ask, how was our holiday or how was our vacation? And it was neither of those. It was very much an adventure. Leading up to our trip, we asked our kids how they thought our lives compared to the lives of people in the rest of the world. And they thought that our lives in Canada were probably average, that they lived an average life and that they had average wealth. So it was a real eye opener for them to go to these places around the world. Did you know that we went to the 19 countries, 16 of them were developing countries. Mm-hmm. So what we used to call third world. So anyhow, the kids really saw, and we did too, how people really live most of the world over. And in our 8th month of travel, I decided that it would be a really good TED Talk. So that was the genesis of it. Yeah.
Awesome. So one of our most recent interviews is with a self-proclaimed digital nomad, Ricky Shetty, who is really our first Get Accepted participant who actually got accepted. And then he just gave his TED Talk in the Philippines, where he is temporarily living right now. He's doing a travel nomad virtual summit actually this week happening right now. So it's this idea is really gaining a lot of popularity, being a digital nomad full-time or even for 9 months like you and your kid. I mean, I would certainly consider you to be doing that. And you went all over the place. I love the story. It's kind of a sobering story, but you were in Cambodia and the survivors of the Pol Pot regime, and they have 1 out of 250 Cambodians are amputees because of the landmines and all these horrible things, yet they are very, very ironically typical once we get out of the developed world. So loving, so generous, so forgiving, so magnanimous in every way. So that was just really striking. Could you speak to that for a moment?
Certainly. Definitely one of the most profound experiences of my life and memories of all my family. We found an opportunity to stay on a small farm in the middle of Cambodia, very non-touristy area, and to work with them, lightly volunteering with the family. And so we were provided very simple rooms and food in exchange for us helping them with mostly their coconut plantations and their okra farm. We helped them lay irrigation lines and with all of our experience and mill rice. And each night we sat and ate with the family, and they told us their stories of survival in the era of the Pol Pot time. And they had been intellectuals who had lived in the bigger cities, but they were forced to flee and become farmers during the 1980s for survival. So on the property, there were monuments that were dedicated to their parents who had gone missing just simply walked off with soldiers one day and never returned. And I referred to a lotus pond that was in their fields, and we complimented how beautiful it was. And they told us that it was actually the result of an American B-52 bomber. And they had just left it there because it collected water. So they were just tough people and just absolutely so beautiful. And when we asked them about their feelings now, did they have resentment? Did they have anger? And they couldn't believe we were asking that question, because they felt so lucky that they had survived. They had this farm. They had immense wealth in ways that we don't normally equate wealth. So it was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
I guess what an exercise in reframing, because from a Western, fully developed, privileged society, go over there and we bombed you. Speaking as an American, because I know
I'm a Canadian.
You're a Canadian. You're a Canadian. So I'm feeling a little bit more than you. You could be like those people to the south of us with the interesting administration right now. You could do all kinds of things, but it's amazing because their perspective, because they are so close to it, they are so thankful just for so many of them, at least in your experience that you're telling us right now. And it's so amazing because the rest of us are just trying to optimize and get to the next level and do all these things. And it really does breed discontent. We've got our Instagrams. It's like who's going out to Tahiti this week instead of me, and everything else. And it breeds discontent and misery and depression and anxiety and all these things that we're seeing. And yet you and your husband and the kids are completely disconnected, and you're hanging out with people who are not anywhere near as well off as we are, and yet they're actually on the inside they are way better off because they choose to see it that way. So what's the takeaway for all of us and for you?
Well, the three poorest countries that I've been to, and two of them were with our family. That was Cambodia and Nepal, and then recently I was in India for business. Mm-hmm. And I would say that they were. I didn't encounter everyone, but overall, the happiest people I've come across. So, I think we know that wealth does not equate happiness, and that as long as your, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as long as your basic needs are being met, that happiness and wealth can have an inverse relationship than what we might expect. It's not very profound, but that's the finding.
Yeah, well, and it's funny how it all comes back to Maslow. It really does. What's the study they did? Like $70,000 American dollars is about the threshold. If you make more than that, you're not going to be any more happy. And depending on how stressful your life is, you might start declining. And once you have about 70 grand, apparently that's the price to buy off the lower levels of the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah. And I think also, some reading that I've done recently is about if you have a sense of community and if you have a sense of purpose. Those are the two biggest qualities in finding true deep happiness. And so for example, the Cambodians that we stayed with, the family, they had a 3 or 4 generation family living together. They had a beautiful community around them that they were working very cohesively with. So they had their community and they had their sense of purpose. Even the great grandma, who was hovering around 100 years old, got up every morning with a project. She had something to do. She contributed to the cooking. She contributed to the gardening. So never losing your sense of purpose and your sense of community. I guess that's the real takeaway. Well, that's what these people have that maybe we are missing in Western society. That's amazing, because a bunch of us are really running after purpose and what's my calling and what's my purpose, all of that. And it's like that. It's interesting because like you're going to be into purpose, and that's for so many of us. It's not communal purpose. It is kind of a self purpose, and that's going to tend to drive us away from community because we want to be, at least for me, I want to be with intentional people who are also, kind of selfishly pursuing their own individual purpose. I don't mean selfishly in a super pejorative way, but it tends to
they tend to kind of diverge a little bit. So that's really interesting to me that you're saying that, because it can be a balance. And I may be looking at it the other way. The real way of purpose is by impacting community, or else you're not going to find purpose, might be another way of looking at it. What do you think?
I do. I think so. I think, and again, back to like happiness. I'm talking about not surface happiness, but deep happiness. It's very hard to be depressed when you're helping someone else, right? It's very hard to wallow in your own sorrow and pity if you're helping someone else. So again, going out into the world and having to make a pretty big effort at things and help other communities on whatever level, or just see how they're living their lives. It's hard to get really upset about, like you said, your Instagram feed or, superficial nonsense like that. So, not that I don't love Instagram.
Oh, we all love Instagram.
Figuring out the balance.
We're not throwing any shade on Instagram at all. So we are enjoying this conversation with Sunny McGaw. Her talk is called Building Mental Grit Through Hard Travel. Great talk. Just came out. So congratulations. And we're going to hear a little bit more of the details of the prep and performance of that talk in just a moment in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz Round with Sunny McGaw. Her talk is called Building Mental Grit Through Hard Travel. And we're going to ask a series of either or questions to Sunny. Sunny, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. First off, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I applied.
What is your advice for other people who are trying to get accepted, especially as a digital nomad? Because I'm actually giving a webinar presentation as part of this virtual summit. So I'd love your tips, and I might actually include those and reference those in this webinar that I'm doing this week.
Okay, Nathan, good question. I made it like I was writing a university application, or like I was actually writing a thesis. I put about 100 hours into my application. Now,
the application,
because
the application.
I hit it so hard.
Wow.
So I often believe that, and I heard this from someone else, I often believe that I can't necessarily out-talent people, but I can usually out-prepare them. Mm-hmm. That's my mantra. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the application as thoroughly and completely as I could. I wrote one application, and it was my first talk of this nature. So, I hit it with all I had. I thought it was a really good theme that suited my talk, or my talk suited the theme. So I really, really wanted to get it. And I made a good video. I had a 2-minute video, and I made a good video. So that's how I applied. And you mentioned that you realized that, you're in month number 8 of the 9-month trip. You're visiting, I believe, 19 countries, and you realize almost at the end, when you're ready to come back to Toronto area, hey, this is going to make a great talk. So you applied, and you did it at that point, and you just did it from the field, from the road. Yes, we were in Colombia, and we had just had a very harrowing experience. We had been sick. My family. That story. We got sick. We won't go into this too much. We're gonna give you a link to watch this. This is crazy what you went through. once we were out of the jungle, and once we were healed, I realized, wow, we've been through some really interesting things that in parenting up until these 13 years, we have not gone through any of this, and how we've grown from it. So in that month, I realized, okay, I've got a kind of a good story, a really good idea here. And that's when I wrote the application. Yeah. Well, and that was another point of commonality, because the last time I was in Delhi, I was flying out of Delhi about a year ago, last December. And that was my first experience sick on the road. And, oh my word, won't get into that, but, my word, it's, I feel your pain. What's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you? It helped me in rehearsal. I rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed. And I had read that if you sound over rehearsed, it's probably because you haven't rehearsed enough. So I also rehearsed in different scenarios. Yeah. I mean, teach their own, but this is what worked for me. I'm not spontaneous. And, so this right now is challenging for me. And so I had to had every word. And when I said my TED Talk, I didn't miss a word because I had rehearsed it so carefully. I rehearsed it in the car, in the shower. I rehearsed it every single morning while I walked my dog. If he could speak English, he could say my TED Talk because I said it so many times to him. So, and I said it in different ways. I hired a voice coach who was really helpful. So I had the help of a professional. And I also said it to people. So I recruited friends, who were comfortable enough to give me criticism. And to give me feedback. And I said it to my boss. So I tried to say it in intimidating situations in advance. Because if you only ever say it to yourself and your dog, well, that's not really a fair feedback loop. So I said it in situations that made me uncomfortable. And I said it when I was tired. And I said, so that I could, have a wide, breadth of experience in advance of going on stage.
Well, and I love that. I mean, so I got to unpack this, for Talk Universe here. I think I heard three things, and I don't know if I'm going to remember them all, but, number one, rehearse, so that when the time comes, you can actually be present. Number two, find a coach. Vocal coach is a great thing. And if you're looking for a TED coach or TEDx coach, make sure if you're doing that specifically and they call themselves that, make sure they've actually given one. Because it's amazing how many people haven't actually done that. So good for you. You got a vocal coach who can help you with all of those things as well. Yep. And then number three is, I love this. You said it for your boss. You found challenging, stressful situations and conditions to perform under so that when you actually walked out on that stage, it wouldn't be as crazy, as bad, as it would normally be. And really, number four, I mean, Sunny, you know yourself. So you know that you're not that much of an improviser. I love that you talk about, one of your keys is adaptability. That's my lowest one on the on the Strength Finder profile, but you need that for travel, and you also need that to be part of a TEDx event and not be, to be an asset to people, to be easy to work with, to help and add value, to lighten the loads for the organizers and the volunteers and the sponsors and the team, instead of, being a high maintenance or a kind of a liability. So I think those things are absolutely huge. My final question for you, Sunny, is the cut for time question. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
Oh, you know what? That's a great question. The most painful part was one of our motives for traveling was that I had a very dear friend of mine get sick. She got cancer. And it's a good news story. She's fine. She's well. But when she went through that, I spent a lot of time with her. And I realized, my goodness, we don't know how much time we have on this planet and how much time we have to be well and how much time we have to live our dreams, like our trip, our travel. And that was such an important motivation for us traveling. But I did end up cutting that out of my talk. And so that was a difficult thing for me emotionally. But I like the idea of condensing things and the murder your darlings. Yep. So I took that out. And I think it made for a more condensed and a stronger speech. It was just hard emotionally for me to remove it.
Which is why I asked the questions. That's exactly because we all want to pack 40 minutes into an 18 or a 12 or a 9-minute talk. And the more willing you are to slash that stuff, the better talk you're going to have and the more watchable it's going to be.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, we've been enjoying this talk with Sunny McGaw. Her talk is called Building Mental Grit Through Hard Travel. And her website is 5backpacks.wordpress.com, the number 5backpacks.wordpress.com. You can go to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com and get a link to that or a link to her talk, which is amazing also. And as well, we'll have her LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with Sunny in that way. And we'll be right back with Sunny McGaw for the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with Sunny McGaw. It's time for the final word of advice. What is it?
Well, I guess I've spoken with many, many people who want to give TED Talks, and they all seem to have a block. I can't do it. I'm too scared. I'm too nervous. I was that. I was too scared. I was too nervous. I didn't know if I had the time. I didn't know if I had the talent. So, leap and the net will appear.
One of my least favorite sayings.
I love it. How's this? Fortune favors the bold. Better?
Love it. Love both of them. We've been enjoying this talk with Sunny McGaw. Thank you so much for joining us on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thanks, Nathan. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.